Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, fixing pardons and parole. Also, is Mike Durant running a stealth campaign? And permitless carry looks like it's passing.
Do you want to play rough? Okay. Uno. Say hello to my little friend.
Permits? We don't need no stinking permits. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and today I'm joined by Susan Britt, research guru extraordinaire, and Josh Moon, investigative reporter and columnist at APR. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
Hey, guys.
I think sometimes it's our responsibility to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. But this past couple of weeks, it seems like the Alabama legislature has been determined that the comfortable will afflict the afflicted. You know, Josh, I mean, we've seen this permitless carry bills come and go. We've seen them, transgender this, transgender that, and riot bill this and riot bill that. I mean, it's just like we've had a frog in a boiling pan, or in a warm pan, who has now gone on to be boiling. I mean, it's just nuts.
But we're about to eat frog legs. We are. It has been a pretty crazy session here. I mean, I think we somewhat expected that, just simply because it's an election year, and you knew that they were going to be tossing out some red meat type stuff to voters, which to me, and I don't know how y'all feel about this, but to me that is somewhat more troubling. Is that they believe the constituency in Alabama, that the voters of Alabama are more interested in these sorts of issues than they are real actual problems here. And I mean, right. I don't know who you would talk to in this state that would say that we should be addressing, transgender bathrooms, or, getting in between doctors and children, or, offering more guns out on the streets here. I don't know who would, even if they were for those bills and they were fine with them, I don't know who would say, well, we need to spend the most amount of time on that and not addressing things like education and health care. I mean, health care is a huge issue. We haven't done, have you heard of a health care bill here?
No. The only healthcare bill I've heard about is one where when they pull the plug at the hospital, they don't have to have anybody sign it or notarize it. But that's a whole,
huge issue on that one. Yeah, it's great.
But it looks now, the governor will have an opportunity to sign a permitless carry bill, Susan. This has been fought against by the Sheriff's Association, by law enforcement, by the county commissioners, but it looks like that's what we're going to have, is that people are going to be able to carry guns in Alabama, concealed weapons, and nobody's going to know who's got them, and they're not going to know their mental health of the people who have them. So there you go.
Exactly. It makes no sense. It's not like you can't carry a gun, concealed carry gun, in Alabama now. They're treating this like we're going to take away your guns unless we have permitless carry. That makes no sense. I mean, you can have people with mental health issues. You can have, to use their phrase, illegal immigrants come in here and buy guns, and nobody checks. I mean, it's just, as you said, Josh, a red meat issue, which a problem does not exist. That they're going, and I believe they're going to try to use a deck of money to replace the fees.
Well, and that's the funny thing. You just hit the nail on the head. So the sheriff's department's going to lose all this revenue, right, from the gun permit, but they've come up with a way to replace it. And that is by giving grants to the sheriff's offices to fill up the hole.
From a decade.
Yeah.
That's a tax. That's a tax on people, is what that is.
Yeah.
You're taxing. That's tax dollars, and you're repurposing tax dollars that would have gone to roads or infrastructure or some other kind of development project. You're repurposing that money to give to sheriff's offices because they're going to lose the revenue from permits that are going to, because they're losing permits to make the streets less safe. I would encourage Kay Ivey to talk to the police chief in the city where she resides in Montgomery, because she's not just there because she's governor. She's there. She lives there. I've walked by her house many days. We lived in the same neighborhood for a while. And the police chief from her city stood up in a committee meeting this week and gave the stats. Didn't say anything, no opinion at all. Just gave the simple stats on how they were able to use the permit requirement to take 1,700 guns off the street last year, and how they have already taken more than 400 guns off the street this year. And we're having record numbers of shootings out there because guns are everywhere, and it's a tool that the police departments and sheriff's departments in this state are using to be able to take guns from bad people who should not have them. These are not law-abiding citizens that they're taking guns from. They're taking guns from people who should not have them. And I wish they would just talk to the police about this.
Well, common sense, as we often say in government, is not very common. This is playing to a minority of folks.
Yes.
But
Now, one other thing I got to bring up here. Now that they're going to use the ADECA money for the sheriffs, that means that everybody pays this tax.
Right.
Even people that don't own guns are going to be paying for this permit refund back to the sheriffs.
Everybody's going to be paying for somebody else to have a gun and not pay.
Yeah.
Just crazy. Anyway, a very serious problem also is pardons and paroles. They are not pardoning people or paroling people, and they're not giving a reason for not doing it. Now, there's a bill in the House and in the Senate that says pardons and parole has to follow their own guidelines, Josh. You want to help us understand that a little bit? Because they don't follow their own guidelines.
Their own guidelines.
Yeah. There are a set of guidelines that were implemented there that pardons and paroles are supposed to follow. There's a score sheet for prisoners that you get judged by how many violent interactions you've had or none, how much education you've taken, how many education courses you've taken, how much workforce training you've had. All of these things go onto a score sheet, and you are scored there before you go in a parole hearing. And at that parole hearing, they're supposed to take into consideration these sheets, and they're supposed to take into consideration how much of your sentence you've served, and then they're supposed to follow the guidelines that they themselves have set. And they're not. They're not following them at all. And not to mention, while it's a discretionary situation that they've created where they're determining who gets out and who doesn't based on their own whims, apparently, it has also turned into a huge racial issue because just look at the simple stats of how many white prisoners come before them with the same scores as black prisoners that come before them. And white prisoners are getting out at a much higher rate, 2 to 1. On this, and nobody can explain it because you're not following the guidelines, and that's all anybody is asking for.
Well, even further than that, they're refusing to give rationale or reasoning behind their decisions not to let prisoners out. They refuse to answer to anybody on this issue.
There should be legitimate pardons and paroles. That's what it's there for. But again, this is Alabama, baby. We're making up the rules as we go. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and opinion.
I'm Donald Trump, and I love Alabama. As many of you know, there are few issues facing our nation as important as election integrity and election fraud. This is why the people of the great state of Alabama must work together to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. So get out, register to vote, and get a photo ID so you can make your voice heard and decide the future of our great country. Thank you.
Lindy Blanchard started out in a trailer in Wetumpka, then succeeded in business. President Trump named her our country's ambassador to Slovenia. Now she's stepping forward to fight for Alabama.
I will use my business experience to create jobs, end vaccine and mask mandates, improve our schools, and restore election security.
Driven by faith, trusted by President Trump, conservative outsider Lindy Blanchard for governor.
My dog Jupiter is frightened when I climb too high, the owl said.
Check for monsters, Daddy.
I did, honey. There are no monsters. You're perfectly safe.
Protect yourself and those you love. Vaccinate now.
So you got caught speeding. But this time you got more than a ticket.
What are you in for?
Vehicular homicide.
Stop speeding before speeding stops you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. The state of Alabama passed a law last session that would allow home delivery of alcohol, Susan. So far, there's only a handful of areas that have alcohol delivery. These alcohol delivery was supposed to come through private package stores and grocery stores and that type of thing. But we can't seem to get the ABC board to approve these licenses to distribute the alcohol. And now we're learning that the ABC stores are wanting to get into the business of delivering the alcohol themselves. Sounds like something a little shady there.
A little bit shady. See, the bill says that you have to make X requirements. You have to have these licenses, you have to pay these fees, you have to, be in a situation where you're paying taxes, none of which is required of the ABC stores. So they think they fall under this law when they actually don't. And it's gotten so bad that now it's going to go to court, it looks like.
Yeah, Josh, it looks like the private package store groups are going to sue the ABC store because, as they said, there's no mechanism to make a state agency obey the law without.
It's hard to do that, isn't it? I honestly, I need to look at this a little more in depth and get a little bit more of the background on this thing, because I tell you, it really does stink. You've got a bunch of businesses out here that are vying for this service that is legal now, and you have an entity in between them and that service that has to license it. And that entity is going to control its own stores, and that stinks, right? Doesn't that? Am I wrong? Does that not strike anybody else as just kind of really unfair to everybody?
Unfair in Alabama?
Yeah, it just seems idiotic, and the fact is that we've been over a year now, and we really don't have the law that was passed. And now ABC wants to get into the business. No wonder they're slow walking it. Maybe they're not. It seems like
I don't know. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know for a fact that they're being slow walked on the thing, but it does. It raises that where you just go, what? When you hear that they're the ones controlling the licenses to do this, and then they're going to do it anyway, even though under the law apparently they're not really supposed to, because they don't apply for a license, and the law says only licensees can do the delivery service. I'll just say this: I know the private package stores have got Joe Espy as an attorney, and I would bet on Joe pretty much all the time.
I would bet
any day.
I would bet. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, even if it sounds like a drunk duck, it's probably a duck. Something happened. They had this gender puberty blocking bill advances to the House. It's already passed the Senate. And what this bill says, Susan, is that if a doctor treats a transgender youth with hormones or any type of hormone replacement therapy, that they can face 10 years in prison. Now, we just are coming at the tail end of a pandemic where our Republican friends said that it was tyranny and that it was not the state's business to require us to wear masks. Now, what these legislators are doing is say that families and their doctors cannot seek medical treatment for their transgender youth. So the state is going to tell you what you can do with your child.
Yeah, let's not forget here that also these are the same people that said, you know, a government mandated a vaccine was a bad thing. You know, you talk about getting in between people and their doctors with the youth, but are they talking out of both sides of their mouth?
Yeah,
Josh,
that's kind of what they do.
Go ahead.
I mean, they just leave them wide open and breathe. You know, it's honestly, I'll say this. I don't have a lot of experience with transgender people. And so I was unfamiliar with these processes and things, and I wanted to learn more about, because, you know, I heard, well, they're performing these surgeries, and I'll be honest, I was like, well, man, you know, performing a surgery on a kid that's trying to, you know, I don't know about that. Well, so I looked it up, and there's listen, you can Google it. There's tons of information out there from reliable sources, doctors and medical associations. They're not doing that. You know,
no, they're not.
They're not. That's specifically against the guidelines from the American Medical Association, and I mean, doctors are simply not doing that, and they're treating kids. There are steps that these children have to go through if they feel these certain ways, and that the parents have to go through. This is not. You don't run in tomorrow and get a sex change operation for a 12-year-old. This is nonsense.
No.
It's scare tactics, and you're hurting kids. And you know what? I'm going to guess that half of them know good and hell well that they're hurting these kids, and they don't care because it's easy votes.
It really is. It really is. I mean, listen, this is a personal, long-term decision between parents, their children, and their doctor. Mm-hmm. This is not easy. But to use children, Susan, children that are already, you know, in a tough situation, as a political football to gain votes is just a shame. You know, they were singing Amazing Grace Thursday in the chamber of the Senate, and I said, they're going to sing Amazing Grace and then show absolutely no mercy for these families of children that are going through this trying situation.
Absolutely. They need to look at what they preach.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
Josh,
I mean, it's just it's honestly, it's one of the most horrible things I've seen them do there, and I've seen them do a lot of horrible things. But this is one of the worst that I've ever seen from them. They know that it's hurting kids. They know that they're putting kids who are with the highest suicide rates in the world. They know that they're pushing them towards more suicides, and they don't care. They simply do not care.
They don't care.
I just, you know, I swear. Republicans used to talk about smaller government, less government interference in business and in your personal life. But it has gotten to the point that interference in people's personal lives seem to be the main thing that's going on. And I don't understand the Republican Party that really wants to control every aspect of people's lives. I mean, it's like they just say, well, shut up, we're in charge. I don't get that.
I mean, from the bedroom to the doctor's office, they've inserted themselves everywhere, and it's just for a group that claims to hate big government and want to smaller government. There is no bigger government than getting in between not only a doctor and a patient, but a parent and their child in the same situation, and that's what they've done. They've inserted themselves in between the doctor and the parent and the patient. It's just. It's unimaginable to me that they believe that they know more than these doctors.
That's right. We're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
My dog Jupiter is frightened when I climb too high, the owl said.
Check for monsters, Daddy.
I did, honey. There are no monsters. You're perfectly safe.
Protect yourself and those you love. Vaccinate now.
back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. A funny thing happened, Charlie Walker, she edits the scripts before they go out and everything, and I had written there, Arab man pleads guilty to January 6th sedition conspiracy case. And she said, do you know that everybody in Alabama knows where Arab is? Won't they think it's an Arab man who pled guilty?
That's a pretty good one.
And so we changed it to man from Arab.
There you go. That's a good catch, Charlie. That's a good catch.
That is funny, because I honestly, when I read it, I read Arab man, and I'm guessing in this state is the only place that you would read Arab man.
I know. Anyway, Joshua James, 30-year-old Arab man, not an Arab man, but an Arab man, regional leader of the Oath Keepers, Josh, pled guilty this week to seditious conspiracy and obstruction of federal official proceedings and trying to stop the electoral college vote count, something that was totally illegal. And we've had a lot of people that have been involved in that, but this man pled guilty to it. He will go to prison, but he is also cooperating.
Yeah, he's the first to plead guilty to seditious conspiracy. So it's something a lot of people have been waiting on. And I looked through this, and he also admitted having a bunch of conversations and doing a bunch of planning, being willing to take up arms to go to the Capitol to stop the vote count from happening. So all of that was in the guilty plea that he put forth. And I'll say, I don't want this to come off the wrong way. So I want to say up front that I think Mr. James should absolutely be punished. He should go to prison for what he did because he's a grown person and he should have known better. That said, this is a man who's in the military, a Purple Heart recipient, has taken orders for most of his adult life. And those types of people, I think, are particularly susceptible to influence from government leaders, particularly the president, members of Congress, and you can name off some: Mo Brooks, Tommy Tuberville, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley. All of these people told this man that Democrats had stolen the election, that it's a stolen election, and they're cheating everybody out of this. Okay, and so they set this man up like a scammer on the phone. They set him up to go to D.C. and to do this nonsense. Trump pushed him. Mo Brooks pushed him. They all pushed him at the little rally at the Ellipse, and they sent him over to the Capitol with the express intent of stopping that vote count. And that man went over and did it, took orders like he'd been taking most of his adult life, and went over to do just that. And so while I hold him responsible for what he did, those other people should bear some responsibility for this as well.
Well, and it's just, the shame is that there's still plenty of people who still think this election was stolen. Mm-hmm. They think that January 6th was appropriate. It just strikes me, while the Ukrainian people are fighting off the kind of dictator that this country could have. Yeah. Could have. Mm-hmm. They're fighting them off, and we still have some Republicans who refuse to accept the fact that their guy lost. It happens. But it's this country, we can't be like Russia. We can be if we keep following leaders that have dictatorial complexes. Exactly. But again, this man is going to pay the price. You're right.
They had him so wound up that he not only went there, and it wasn't just inspired by the speeches that day. He was prepared with all kinds of military regalia, prepared with weapons and all. So he admitted that he had been talking to folks within his group from November through January. Right. That's quite a while to get all ramped up.
Yeah.
And then
they pushed and pushed and pushed. The big lie went on for a long time. It wasn't just that day. And I think that's a misconception. Exactly. And I wish a lot of people in the media would stop with that. Focusing so much on just that day. This thing went on for a long time. It started even before the election. Trump started talking about how they were going to cheat and they were going to steal. And I understand that it was an election unlike previous ones because of the pandemic and that we had a lot of mail-in votes. But man, we've done so many audits and we've done done so many investigations at this point. If there was a shred of evidence that would have overturned anything, we would have it at this point. All right?
Yeah.
But we don't. Yeah. We simply do not have it. And it's a nonsense lie from the outset. And they pushed these people into this thing knowing full well that this was going to be the result.
Well, the tragedy is that for the first time in our country's history, the loser could not accept the will of the people, and therefore divided us even further. Democracies like ours only work if the loser is willing to admit to defeat. I want to move on here. Interesting, U.S. Senate candidates Mo Brooks, Katie Britt, Mike Durant have been invited to scores of forums around the state. Katie Britt and Mo Brooks have shown up to those forums. Mike Durant has missed at least 3 of them. And his people came out and said, well, he's running a stealth candidacy. He don't want people to know where he's at. I seriously, I think they meant location. But what I think they mean is they don't want this guy, anybody to know what he really believes or who he really is.
Yeah, the last time he was in a room full of people with a lot of our reporters there, as soon as the meeting was over, he didn't take any questions from the audience. He ran out of there like a scalded dog with the people going, oh, he's got a meeting in Montgomery, which didn't exist. But nevertheless, that's pretty stealth as far as I can tell.
I mean, this guy is running neck and...
he's better off not talking, I think is what stealth means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and people, listen, Mo Brooks, Katie Britt, Mike Durant, they're within the margin of error for this primary in May. And right now, the only thing that people know about Mike Durant is what they've heard from his television ads. People, they lie in their television ads. They lie. That's what they do. And he's like some big war hero and all that. I don't know what the man went through in 11 days in Somalia. But look, that's not a defining moment if you're going to be a U.S. Senator, in my mind.
Well, no, I think it is, it can talk about his character in somewhat. I think there are other things in his past that we've reported on that also talk about his character in some ways as well. But, you know, that those things are in the past, and you really want to know. The reason why they have the forums is you want to know how he feels about issues that are currently affecting you as an Alabamian. You know, you're going to go to the Senate, be one of 100, that you can make a real difference as one of 100. And so they want to know that you're going to make the difference that they want you to make. And, you know, if you're not showing up and you're afraid to talk about your beliefs, then, I'd be afraid to vote for you.
Well,
I don't think he cares.
I think he's another rich guy that wants to buy an election. But we're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.